In the freezing streets of Chicago, where the wind bites through the thickest coats, lived an old man named Arthur. To the people in his run-down apartment building, he was just a grumpy recluse in a wheelchair, someone who rarely spoke and always stared at the sirens passing by. The neighbors complained about his old-fashioned ways, and the landlord called him a burden who was behind on his rent. 25 years ago, Arthur was a hero, the captain of Engine 54, until a massive warehouse fire took his legs and his career. The city gave him a medal, then promptly forgot his name. But today, a giant real estate developer has bought Arthur's building, and they've sent the police to drag him out into the snow. But as the cameras of the local news arrive to capture the eviction of a nobody, a woman in a high-ranking uniform steps out of a government vehicle. She isn't here to move him. She's here to show the city that the man they are treating like trash is the only reason they are standing there today. The story goes back to a terrifying night in 1999. The Great West Side Fire was devouring a 10-story textile factory. The heat was so intense it was melting the asphalt on the streets. Captain Arthur Vance and his team were the last ones inside. The roof was groaning, ready to collapse. In the middle of the smoke, Arthur heard a faint cry. A 5-year-old girl, the daughter of a night janitor, was trapped behind a heavy iron door that had expanded in the heat. His crew shouted him to get out. The building was coming down, but Arthur didn't listen. He used his bare hands and his axe to wedge that door open. He wrapped the girl in his own protective jacket and threw her into the arms of his fellow firefighter, just as the ceiling crashed down on his lower body. He saved the girl, but he stayed in that fire for 3 hours before they could dig him out. The city called him a lion for a week. They gave him a parade and a piece of shiny metal, but a soldier of the fire doesn't eat medals. Arthur's injuries were so severe he could never walk again. His medical bills swallowed his pension. His wife, unable to cope with the trauma and the poverty, eventually left. Arthur moved into a small one-room apartment in a building that the city had ignored for decades. He spent 25 years in that room, surrounded by his old helmet and photos of his crew. He became invisible. The younger generation in the building didn't know he was a hero. They just saw an old man who smelled like old books and medicine. He was a relic of a time when people cared about their neighbors. Chapter 3: The Developer's Greed. By 2026, the neighborhood was changing. High-rise luxury condos were being built everywhere. A developer named Silas Thorne, a man who valued skyscrapers over souls, bought Arthur's building. He wanted to turn it into a private wellness club for the elite. Thorne didn't care about the elderly tenants. He hiked the rent by 400% overnight. When Arthur couldn't pay, Thorne didn't offer a grace period. He filed for an immediate eviction. He wanted the eyesore gone before the grand opening of his new project next door. He even hired a private security firm to intimidate the tenants, telling Arthur, "The world is for the fast and the strong, old man. You're just taking up space." Monday morning arrived with a brutal blizzard. The moving trucks were already at the curb. The sheriff's deputies arrived to execute the order. Arthur sat in his wheelchair at the door of his apartment, his old fire captain's hat on his head. He told them, "I've faced walls of fire taller than this building. I'm not afraid of a man in a suit." A crowd of protesters and local news crews gathered outside. Silas Thorne stood there looking at his gold watch, telling the reporters that he was cleaning up the city. He ordered the workers to start throwing Arthur's belongings, his books, his furniture, his memories, into the snow. The crowd booed, but the law was on Thorne's side. Arthur's old fire helmet was tossed into a pile of trash on the sidewalk. Suddenly, the sound of a heavy siren cut through the wind. It wasn't a police car. It was a massive, modern fire command vehicle. It pulled up right behind the moving trucks, blocking them in. A woman in a dark blue uniform with 5 gold stars on her shoulder stepped out. She was the fire commissioner of the city of Chicago, the most powerful person in the department. Silas Thorne rushed over, thinking she was there to help with the safety of the eviction. He started talking about zoning laws and property rights, but the commissioner didn't even acknowledge him. She walked straight to the trash pile on the sidewalk. She knelt in the snow, picked up the rusted, battered fire helmet, and wiped the soot off with her own sleeve. The commissioner walked up the steps, past the stunned sheriff's deputies, and stopped in front of Arthur. The cameras were rolling, capturing every second. "Captain Vance," she said, her voice echoing with a mixture of command and deep emotion. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." Arthur looked up, his eyes squinting through his glasses. "Do I know you, ma'am?" The commissioner reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, charred piece of a firefighter's jacket, the same one Arthur had wrapped a little girl 25 years ago. "My name is Sarah," she whispered, "and 25 years ago you stayed in hell so I could have a future. I didn't become a firefighter to win medals. I became a firefighter to find the man who taught me that no one gets left behind." The atmosphere changed instantly. Sarah turned to Silas Thorne and the lawyers. She didn't offer to buy the building. She pulled out a document with the seal of the city council and the governor's office. "Mr. Thorne," she announced, her voice like a hammer, "we've conducted an investigation into your acquisition of this property. We found that you illegally bribed the zoning board to ignore the Veteran Housing Protection Act. As of this moment, this building is being seized under immense domain for the creation of the Vance Hero House, a permanent, rent-free residence for disabled first responders." She pointed to the moving trucks. "Put his furniture back, every single piece, and then get off this property before I have you arrested for endangering a decorated officer of this city." Thorne tried to speak, but the crowd's roar of "USA, USA" drowned him out. The world told Arthur he was a nobody because he was old and broken. They told him in a city of glass and gold there was no room for a man in a wheelchair. But they forgot that the very foundations of Chicago were built on the backs of men like him. Silas Thorne thought he could clear the trash, but he ended up losing his empire to the very girl Arthur had saved. Remember, every act of courage is a flame that never truly goes out. You might think your sacrifice is forgotten, but the universe has a long memory. Arthur didn't just save a life that night in 1999. He saved himself 25 years in the future. If this story reminded you to never forget those who protect us, type "hero" in the comments and share this to honor our first responders.